Aw, shells. I do love a good shell sometimes, except for red shells. They suck. When you compare it to something like Mario Kart DS or Mario Kart 8, where red shells are unstoppable, then, yeah, red shells in this game are quite stoppable. Which makes you think, well, at least it made me think that maybe it's not even worth it to throw red shells in the first place. And by the way, let's not forget about green shells too. Red shells might not be good at their job, but green shells don't even home on to the opponent in the first place, so is it worth it to throw them too? There's 3 things you can do with any given shell. You can throw it forwards, backwards, or just hold on to it. For any given shell, it's good to hold on to it to protect against the people behind you. You can slow own people with a shell, which is actually a lot easier than you might think. Like this clip on Ghost Valley 2, where I hit 3 separate people with my green shells, all because I just got hit by a fib. Wasn't even my fault. I mean, it was. I hit the fib, but it's not like I was trying to hit them. So holding onto your shell sounds like it's going to be the most beneficial way to use it. And I'm not here to argue that. It is. Or at least I know that now, after I did a very important study. So yesterday I conducted a study to see how efficient shells are in any of their given uses. And just forget about the blue shell, okay? We're not talking about blue shells today. We're talking about red shells and green shells. So let's quit wasting time and just go ahead and look at the data. It was kind of a small sample size. I didn't get that many red shells or green shells, a lot fewer than I thought in 12 races. So it's very possible that these numbers could be a fluke. But from what I got in this experiment, the most efficient way to use any kind of shell is throwing a red shell forward. How is that even possible? I was just talking about how red shells are bad, and they are. They're so terrible. They don't lock onto your opponent sometimes. However, throughout the 12 races, they had a 54% chance of success whenever thrown forward. Maybe that seems kind of low. It's only 54%, but that is the most efficient way to use a shell. The second most efficient way to use a shell is holding onto it. Surprise. It just happened that holding onto a red shell worked out a little better for me than holding onto a green shell. There's no reason for that. That's just how the data ended up. But it's safe to say that there was a 35% success rate that if you held a green shell back, you would slow own somebody, which is actually a lot better than I expected. You're just holding onto the shell. You're not throwing it forward or backwards, so there's no missing, you know? The only way you could waste a shell that you're holding onto is if it's shocked out of you, powed out of you, knocked out of you, anything like that. If a shell ended up blocking a snipe or a trap, then that's also a failure, even though that's pretty beneficial. So 35% of the time you're slow owning someone, and the other 65% is split between blocking traps and it getting shocked out of you, which happens. Holding onto a shell puts you at ease for a little bit until, of course, it gets sniped out of you or something. But in that time, you can calm down and focus on driving better, which is very important. So moving on from that, we have the third most efficient way to use a shell, which is throwing a green shell forward. Out of 6 attempted green shell snipes, I hit 1. I don't think that's much of a surprise. Snipes are hard. Here's the clip, by the way. This dude totally got owned by me. Wow. This guy's pretty good. It's no surprise that throwing a green shell forward is way less efficient than throwing a red shell, because red shells home onto your opponent. You're not gonna miss sometimes. So that brings us to our least efficient way to use a shell, which I found in this Mogi, and is kind of surprising. Before any of this, I 100% expected backspam to be much more efficient than sniping. Turns out, I tried backspamming people 3 times. 2 of those times, I was gonna get blued and lose it anyway, so I just threw it backwards just cuz. And another time, I just straight up missed. I thought this might have been a fluke because, I mean, 0 for 3 in 12 races sounds weird. So I watched the most recent Road to 9 session, and it was just as weird. I did backspam someone this time. Daddy Cart, thank you for making the clip. But that was one of 2 attempts out of 8 races. I guess I really am that polite. 20 races and I backspammed someone 5 times. So if you include the Road to 9 session, I guess that's a 20% success rate. And I still think it's a fluke. If you're getting a green shell or a red shell, you're probably in a top spot, which means there's more targets behind you than in front of you. So it makes sense for sniping to be less efficient than backspamming. But I guess maybe not by that much. So does that mean the most efficient way to use a red shell and a green shell is to throw the red shell forward every time and hold on to the green shell every time? Definitely not. Once you're actually on the racetrack, all of the uses for each item are situational. So what do we learn? Red shells don't suck as bad as we thought. Backspam sucks way worse than we thought. Yeah, that's it.